Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. Here we'll talk to the leaders in technology, culture, business, and the arts. We'll cover politics, advocacy, motherhood, writing, mental health, and mostly we'll focus on hope. Join Kim B. Davis, author, playwright, radio personality, event consultant, professional speaker on the Kim B. Davis Show. Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests on, Mr. Eric Harp. He is our certified professional fitness trainer, and he's going to talk to us because we are still celebrating Father's Day. So he's going to talk to us about dads and their health and the special men in our lives, and we're going to talk about dad bods. But before we get to that, we have to talk politics because that's what we do.
That's what we do.
Good evening, Mr. Harp. How are you?
I'm doing well, Ms. Davis. How are you today?
I'm great. So, Ocean City, Maryland. I don't know if you heard about this. 4 kids, these were teenagers who were vaping, and apparently, because I haven't been to Ocean City, but they have an ordinance that says that you aren't allowed to vape in certain areas. And these kids, I guess, were downtown in an area where you're not allowed to vape. Police pulled them over walking, these were beat cops, and said, I need you to put your vapes away. You can't vape in this area. It's not allowed. Kids were like, okay. They kept walking. Another kid, I guess, as he was walking away, pulled his vape out. Now, I want to give this addendum to this story because kids, I don't care if you're 6 to 8 or you're 16 to 18. A kid is a kid. And I know in this country, we say the 18, you're an adult. But I don't know about you, Mr. Hart, but I don't know that many 18-year-olds who really are acting as an adult or just trying to be an adult, but still making childlike decisions.
I mean, listen, from the dawn of time, as soon as you're told you can't do something, you're going to do it.
Exactly.
Let's put this in perspective. And this is a very nice way you put it. And I'm very glad that you gave and illustrated in a very nice way that you did. These beat cops, I'm sure, didn't approach these teenagers in a very civil way and say, please, would you put that away? I'm sure you guys are aware that there's no vaping in this area. I'm sure that it didn't quite go down like that. So, however that exchange went, what we saw on tape was to take the backpack off and get on the ground.
Right.
And that was a little aggressive.
Mm-hmm. That's very aggressive.
Very aggressive. Now, from what I saw on the tape, this teenager had to move his left arm to take this strap. Anybody who's worn a backpack knows that the way that you have to take it off is to grab it by a strap and wiggle a shoulder out. Soon as he touched his backpack, they tased.
They sure did.
Now, how do you take your back? How do you follow a directive and then obstruct justice at the same time? And so this is what the Ocean City, Maryland has police department has now said that their police are they're allowed to use force. They're allowed to use force, and they're going to investigate to see if this was, excessive. But they're allowed to use force but this is not a crime. There was no crime committed. So how do we get to here? How do we go from 0 to 100? There's no crime committed. Okay, so maybe there's an ordinance.
Exactly.
Maybe there's an ordinance that says that there's a no smoking, no vaping in this area, but that's not a crime. That's not a law. That's not punishable by tase. by a taser.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has to be excessive force. I'm deeply upset by it because this is a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not only did they tase him, but they jumped on him and beat him and kneed him several times. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this wasn't just like, you know, I'm kneeing you because I'm like, do what I say. My man was jumping back and giving his full 3 times his body weight. Mm-hmm. This is trying to break this kid's ribs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what upsets me is that once these particular road cops get into these modes, oh, that adrenaline kicks in, and oh, and now it becomes, oh, I'm gonna get you.
Right.
And now, you know, who becomes the animal? Mm-hmm. You know, who's the real animal here? Mm-hmm. And it's definitely on the black and the brown side. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's it's got to stop. This has got to stop. This we got George Floyd, bills. Mm-hmm. George Floyd just got a statue, a monument erected to him in Brooklyn, New York. Mm-hmm. Say his name, say his name, say his name. We are saying his name, but it's not doing any good, especially on the cop side. Mm-hmm. You say his name and it's a little bit more aggression. Mm-hmm. You know, and if I may, let me just flip it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Portland, Oregon.
I was getting ready to talk about that. Go right ahead.
Portland, Oregon, you have the rapid response team. Call it whatever you want in any other city, SWAT, whatever. But that rapid response team, they all just walked out.
And why was that? And why was that?
They walked off because what they say that the powers that be are not investigating why the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa's tearing up the city of Portland. Mm-hmm. And nobody's doing anything about it. Mm-hmm.
And one of their officers was indicted.
One of their officers was indicted for excessive force. So I was going to get to that. Yes, okay. And I'm glad you lead me there because one of the officers was indicted mm-hmm. for that excessive force. Mm-hmm. They think it's wrong. They disagree. So they, in protest, all walk out. And still on the force. And still on the force. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're not left. They're not absent without leave. They're not disciplined with pay or disciplined without pay. Those jokers still go to work every day. They just don't do the rapid response part, which the police department said was a voluntary basis anyway. So things have to change.
They do. Can you explain, Mr. Harp, the importance of the rapid response team, what their primary function or role is in the community?
I'm sorry to giggle, but they are there to rapidly respond to situations that arise. Listen, we are right now as a country, we are surpassing murders of 2 and 3 year spans, gun violence in 2 and 3 year spans already. In June 22nd, 2021, and we are already at close to 300 mass shootings. Mass shootings. Well, not single shootings, mass shootings. This is crazy. This is the world we're living in right now. And And if the police can't respond to a 911 call, and now we have vigilantes all over the place,
right?
Where's the line drawn?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the cops are already beating up on the innocent, black and the brown.
Mm-hmm.
You get what's old is what's new. What goes around comes around. And if this black and brown oppression and the police can't come, oh boy.
Right. Isn't this why the Black Panthers started all those many years ago? They started patrolling their own neighborhood.
Yeah.
They set up community programs to address needs that weren't being taken care of by anybody else.
That's what gangs were. There were many gangs that their whole setup was to protect neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Not terrorize neighborhoods, but to protect the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
But as I don't want to look forward to these kind of days, but there's anti-hate crime bills for every denomination, except
African Americans.
Except African Americans. Do what you will, but to anyone else, don't breathe on them, don't speak ill of them, don't have a negative comment on Facebook. You can't say anything about a cross-gender. You can't say anything about transgenders, anything, but you can say anything you want about African Americans, and it's okay. And hey, listen, and we're in the midst, in the sunshine of a national holiday, recognized Juneteenth. For those that don't know, Juneteenth was the day that those slaves in Texas found out that the Civil War had ended and slavery had ended. Sad story. However, I'm glad that there are people that have been enlightened. It's a twofold. We need enlightenment. Yet the powers that be are fighting enlightenment. They're fighting this critical race theory, and they're getting and to watch the faces that appear on several screens, tablets, televisions, and all. When you get African Americans, Black people standing up, talking about why it's not necessary to teach the history of, however many years, as time has gone by, however many years that it's been since we've been in this country, to not tell the accurate story, and not just of African Americans, but of the Native Americans, of all the Americans that were moved out by the European settlers. The whole story needs to be told.
Absolutely, you're correct.
And there's a lot of atrocities, and there's a lot of good things. Okay, we got a lot of good things. But there are a lot of atrocities that we could learn from and try to learn not to make the same mistake.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't, then we're destined to make the same mistakes. And, that's fatherhood 101, right?
Exactly. You want to pass down lessons learned so that your children don't repeat the same mistakes that you made. You want to set them off in a much better position or a much better place than you were. And oftentimes, and you're absolutely correct. So we have police officers who now are saying, well, we won't respond to your 911 call. And we've had this conversation. You're absolutely correct. Mass shootings are up, just shootings in the community. If you watch news, any major city across this country, violence is everywhere. And you know, even in my neighborhood, I hear sirens all the time. There are apps that can track and tell you where different things are happening, and people are sending me text messages, and they're like, Kim, I know you're going walking, but be careful because such and such is happening 6 blocks away from you. I'm like, okay, do I want to go out for a walk? I mean, you don't want to live in fear, but there is something, it just seems everyone is pent up. There's all this excess energy, and people are releasing it through violence. And then here we have this wonderful holiday. Now we have Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a great day. However, it saddened me to hear last week when I was watching the NBA, the finals, and one of the announcers said, and we're celebrating the end of slavery. And I screamed at the TV. I was like, it is not the end of slavery. This is one of many points. This only happened in Galveston, Texas. And so for me, because 2 of my best friends are historians, and so, you know, when we sit, I learn things, and, you know, they're always giving me books to read. And so then I'm reading stuff and I'm like, oh, that's not what I thought it was. I'm like, oh, wait, why don't we know this? Because this isn't what we're taught.
Accuracy is important.
Absolutely. So when we talk about critical race theory, it's not just about people saying, well, why do we have to talk about why Black people have been marginalized? Well, let's talk about how Black people first came here in the first place. Let's tell the story accurately, and not some of these random things that we see posted on social media where people say, see, in this textbook in Texas, they said that the African slaves were indentured servants, and they were coming over here for opportunity, and they were given jobs. I'm like, slavery was not a job. It was abuse. It was torture. It was terrible. It was inhumane. It was horrible. And we don't want to talk about a lot of the things that we have here. Tom Hanks did an op-ed a few weeks ago and stated that he had never heard of Black Wall Street, what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, this is a huge Hollywood star who is recognizable around the world and is clearly an American citizen, but did not know an important part of his history. If you know nothing about the African American experience beyond slavery and Tulsa, and you don't know that, that's a shame.
Well,
you haven't.
I'm sorry. Yes. John Singleton did a film.
Yes.
Rosewood.
Yes, he did.
It would be interesting if, you know, someone of Tom Hanks' stature and, you know, influence within the business would then do his due diligence, research, and then make a movie. And from his learning, you know, see what type of accuracy and, you know, storytelling that would tell. And these are the type of things that in movies sometimes, you know, breaks that door. You know, I would love that more people read, you know, and got into the books and got into history and not just Googled it, found a book that was written, you know, find out why W.E.B. Du Bois was who he was, you know, find out why Langston Hughes was who he was, and why their place in history. But more so in the present, what I'm hearing as far as critical race theory is how more people are scared. And they talk of, I don't want my child to grow up in a country where he or she has to learn that they're racist simply because of the color of their skin. And I'm like, isn't that the whole point? It's not to teach someone that you're racist, it's to teach what racism is based on the color of your skin.
And to stop it so that you don't continue to perpetuate.
There you go. There you go.
Future generations.
There you go.
So I'm going to give you another fact, and I know, I'm sure you are familiar with this story. The Devil's Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi. So I learned about this a few years ago. I had never heard this story before and had to do some research and found out that it was actually a true story where slaves after the Civil War left, went to this particular area, set up shop, built their own community. And because people were angry and upset, they confined them to this area, of course, took their resources. And then as they began to die off from different diseases and different things, they buried them in a mass grave. And we don't talk about the Devil's Bowl in Natchez. And it's interesting because Natchez, Mississippi has a lot of haunted lore connected to it. And a lot of people, as I was doing research, people were saying, you don't eat the fruit in Natchez because there were stories where the people were forced to prune and take care of all the peach trees. So after they came out of slavery and they were in this area where it was full of, I guess, peach trees, the slave owners gathered together and said, okay, we're gonna put you back into sort of a concentration camp, but while you're here, you're going to work and take care of these peach trees. Black people that were there were not allowed to eat the peaches, even if they fell onto the ground. If you were caught eating a peach, it was death for you. And so a lot of people believe that the peaches that grow in that area, they won't touch them because they believe that because the ancestors died there, that there's a curse upon them. I mean, there are so many different stories. When you go to different plantations around the country and you hear the ghost stories that are associated with them, it's fascinating.
Never heard that one.
I'll have to point you in a direction of that. But the reason that I bring that up is because it's trauma. And the ghost story that haunts America is the mistreatment, the enslavement, and the continued abuse of Black people.
Yes.
And even to this day, even talking about the young man in Ocean City, you neglected to mention he had his hands up. When the police officer, he had his hands up. In the video, we see that. And the police officer, as you said correctly, take your backpack off. And so as he goes to take his backpack off, he tases him. And I'm like, it's a kid. I don't see anything in his hand. So why are you tasing him? But when Dylan Roof killed however many people, I believe it was 20 people.
Take him to lunch.
He was taken from Burger King. When the guy in Aurora, California shot up the movie theater, they were able to take him alive. We have seen case after case after case where other people can be extremely violent, lunge at the police, drive over the police, do all kinds of things, and they are always captured alive. Yet when it's Black and brown people, it becomes a punitive action. We have to put you down. And until we discuss that as a country, yes, we can celebrate Juneteenth and say it's wonderful, but we still have a Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that has not been passed. We have an anti-lynching bill that has not been passed. And Georgia just kicked 100,000 people off the voter roll that they declared ineligible.
Today is June 22nd, 2021, just so we can get the date correct.
Yes.
Today, the GOP blocked the debate on the voting rights bill.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So here we go.
Exactly.
Here we go again. I mean, they're talking about getting rid of the filibuster so they can't, work together and do bipartisan. That means work together. Mm-hmm. So now if they get rid of the filibuster, then just do it all Democrat. Mm-hmm. But then the Democrats will say, well, the next time the Republicans want something, they'll do it all Republican. Right. And
I know.
Here we go.
Exactly.
And it's all designed to keep you from voting. Mm-hmm. The Arizona recount, ain't heard about that in a while, but right. they're so messed up and backwards. Nobody's gonna trust the numbers. They don't even have the support of the Republicans anymore. We trust in the numbers. Mm-hmm. So many things going on to smokescreen the next thing. Mm-hmm. And yet, as we have to keep our eyes on the prize, we have to find some way to stop this violence. You know, we have to find a way to stop this violence amongst ourselves. We have to find a way to stop this violence, you know, with law enforcement.
Exactly.
So there's bad apples everywhere. That's true. But we can't run on that assumption. We can't run on that assumption as we have for the last 500 years that the color of our skin makes us criminals or, you know, criminal activity or ripe for a taser or a whip or a stick, a bat, a gun, or any type of, you know, vitriol, any hate, anything, you know. So we have to, you know, all this time that we're trying to hold our heads up high and live up to every man is created equal and live up to one nation for all, indivisible. You know, all the things that we used to say with our hands over our heart and our hands up like this, you know, when is this going to really mean something?
Right.
So, you know, and it's been 500 years we've been complaining about it. And here we are in 2021, still on the same thing. The John Lewis voting rights bill cannot even see the light of the day.
Absolutely. There is nothing new under the sun, as the Bible would say. There is nothing new. We just keep repeating the same activity and action over and over again.
But I'm hearing you with the
exactly.
We can't give up. We can't give up. But I do hear it's tough. It's tough.
It is tough. However, we do have hope. We have hope because there are people that we see fighting that don't look like us and that are genuine in their commitment to social justice, to equal rights. And so that gives me joy that these people will help join us and that we can move something. It's going to take a lot of energy and effort, but we will eventually get there. That I do believe. But I want to pivot because we are still celebrating Father's Day, and happy belated Father's Day to you.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. So, you know, dad bods are a big thing. So we saw during the pandemic, I don't know if you've seen any of the commercials. There were commercials where people were celebrating dad bods, and I was like, oh, is that a thing now? Is that what we do? Like, oh, okay.
We don't have to call it a dad bod. We can call it a father figure.
Okay, there we go. A father figure. All right. So fathers typically struggle with a beer belly or some type of a pouch. What are some exercises that you would recommend for men, especially coming out of pandemic, that could help strengthen those abdominal muscles?
Well, it's a good question. Let's break it down. We got two types of fat, right? You know, and for men, you know, most of our fat deposits around our midsection. You know? For women, usually around the hip area, and for men, it's around the midsection. All right. Now, there's two types of fat. You got your subcutaneous fat. You know, that skin you can pinch. You know, you can kind of gauge where you are. You got your visceral fat. That visceral fat is what grows between the organs and the stomach, you know, that on the inside, that stuff you know, so you got two types of fat. All right. Now, we don't get there overnight. You know, there's some ways that we get there. All right. So if you're noticing that you're getting there, you might want to turn it around. You know, you got there simply by more calories coming in than calories being burned. Okay. Poor diet, inactivity. You know, these are some of the things that get everybody. All right. Now we're talking dads, more so dads. Listen, dads are dads. Hopefully with the moms, and it's a family unit. So, what you really got to go look good for, and that's a lot of the thinking. Not really trying to attract a mate, so you're not really into keeping yourself up. And those are some possibilities. Now, how do we get rid of those? Well, turn some things around. We can change our diet. So, all right, and a lot of times, being in a committed relationship, you're not trying to attract another mate. So there's a lot of times there's a little more settling, a little more enjoyment of the food, little less activities, so to speak. But some of these things contribute to that father figure. Mm-hmm. And some of the ways that we can turn these things around are just by changing diet, more fluids, better calories, mm-hmm. More protein, mm-hmm. Definitely more protein and less carbs. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we drink plenty of fluids, a lot of water and the good fluids, not the sugary fluids, but want to make sure that we drink some good fluids, and then exercise. Mm-hmm. We want to exercise. We want to move, some cardio and aerobic exercises. So running, walking, hiking, riding a bike, mm-hmm. Doing aerobic classes or group fitness classes at the gym. Mm-hmm. These are just some of the things that we can do to increase our cardio and aerobic and get that heart going. And it's not easy. It takes a little bit of commitment. I'll be the first to tell you, it's not easy, but hard work will pay off. And we may not get that 6-pack, right away. Mm-hmm. In fact, when it comes to burning fat, it's about 1%. 1% of fat a month.
Wow.
Yeah. You're burning 1% of fat a month. And that's about the healthy way. That's about the normal way it's done. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as you go 1% a month, as you keep going, it takes about 15 to 20 months. So we're talking about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to talk to that 6-pack. Mm-hmm. So for women, it takes about 20 months to 24 months. And we're talking 6-pack. Mm-hmm. So we can bring it down. We can definitely get it, get our stomachs down to acceptable levels. But if we're trying to talk 6-packs, we're talking about putting in a lot of work and some diet. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it's all doable. It is very achievable, very healthy way to do it.
So are there some exercises that we can tone? Because some of us may have kept ourselves in shape and we might not be as bad off as we might think. We just might need to tone. Would the mm-hmm. same things that you just mentioned, would that be what we would do, or would it be something different?
Well, ab exercises are definitely great. There's many ab exercises. Some you have to get on the floor. There's some you don't have to get on the floor. And working your abs is going to work your lower back. Mm-hmm. It's going to work your hips. It's going to work your. It's going to work a lot of your body. You can do planks, and just holding yourself direct in the plank is a full body exercise. Okay. But it definitely targets your abs. Okay. Many of crunches, mm-hmm. Reverse crunches, side crunches, crunches with your feet elevated. There's many different crunches that we can do. But what I would not advise is people putting their hands behind their head. Okay. Okay, a lot of times what I see people doing is pulling more on their necks and trying to pull their chins towards their knees instead of using their abs. And so I would suggest just cross your hands over your chest and use your abs. And it's going to be difficult, as it's supposed to be, but it gets easier as you do it. And the more you do, the easier it gets. But putting the hands behind your head seems to pull at the neck. And I hear clients and people throughout the gym saying, my neck hurts every time I do crunches. Every time I do sit-ups, my neck hurts. So that's one of the things I wouldn't recommend.
Okay. Now, what about, and I don't remember if this is the correct name for it, but what is it when you stand against the wall and you hold yourself in a squat? Is that the standing wall sit?
That's a wall sit. That's a wall sit, yes.
Okay. And is that good for your abs?
Well, that's good for your whole body because you work in your legs. Yes, you have to, to hold your back erect against the wall. You are definitely holding your abs in, but it's a full body exercise. And then I would say, put your arms out in front of you. See what that does. It takes all your sides on up.
Wow. Okay. I got to remember that. So it is warm and many of us are exercising outside. And I know we just had the conversation about good fluids. And so I'm going to ask you, what are good fluids? And outside of water, and we know that Gatorade is a billion-dollar industry, and I'm not knocking them, but is Gatorade really the best drink that we should have, or is it just water?
Well, listen, water comes from the earth. Water is natural. Our bodies need water all the time. Gatorades, Powerades, and other sports drinks, what they provide is electrolytes. Now, we lose water and electrolytes every time we sweat.
Okay.
And so we need to replace those. And so what the sports drinks do is heavy on the electrolytes, and they have water in them. So they're really good. Nothing beats water, but the electrolytes that you need to replenish from these sports drinks are very good. And again, it's a matter of brand. They have a lot of flavors, so it's a matter of taste. You can definitely find, and there's others out there. There's, I don't want to give any shouts out to any brands, but there's many sports drinks out there that'll help you with your electrolytes.
Okay. So if I'm just your average Joe, I run around my neighborhood, or I go to the gym and I run, or maybe I'm on the treadmill or the elliptical, or I come to the gym a couple times a week and I lift weights, or I walk in my neighborhood. Is a sports energy drink good for me, or should I just stick with water? Okay.
A sports energy drink is good for you. Again, they're there to replace electrolytes. If the pre-workouts, protein drinks.
Okay.
Protein drinks. You can get protein drinks and shake them up. They come in the little small drinkable containers. You can use the powders at home and use a shaker cup. Protein drinks, you need them. So I would suggest protein drinks before you work out. The Gatorades, the Powerades, the Body Armors, all the other sports drinks, pick a flavor, pick a brand. Go with those to replace your electrolytes after a workout.
Okay. And still make sure we keep our water on tap.
Oh, definitely. Listen, the good book says you need about 8 glasses of water a day.
Yeah, it does.
If you start working out, you're going to need more. So drink your water. And listen, many of us are guilty of not drinking enough water. Many of us. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. Gatorades are not, to be the drink of choice throughout the day. Your body is not going to break these down and process Gatorades like it does water. It's not going to feed your body like that. They're there to replace the electrolytes and to help you to get through and your body to perform a little longer. But we need water.
Absolutely.
Okay. Many of us who drink pops, who drink juices, who drink without water, is why we have these father figures and these dad bods. So we need water in order to flush our body. We need fiber. Please let me not forget fiber, because whatever we put in, we need to push out. And we need that fiber. And when things get blocked and stuck and grow in between organs, and that fat grows in between organs, and it sounds horrible, but that's the visceral fat that I mean. Okay. This is the hard part, because now we are having to lose fat everywhere, and not just in the belly area.
And I would add, when you talk about visceral fat, the danger of visceral fat is, for whatever reason, because that fat can collect around your organs, so it starts to do damage to your organs start to work less efficiently. It also sort of becomes a precursor, what a lot of people will say, before cancer, before heart disease, before diabetes, before any of those things that impact you greatly in terms of your health. And so it's very important to remember that we have to move our bodies, eat healthy, drink our water. And the last thing that I want to say about water is that I'm learning, and I know I don't drink enough, and that is a struggle. And I'm always trying to track how much water I drink and trying to manage that process. But one of the things that I've learned is that when you're exhausted or you're tired, sometimes it's because you're thirsty. Sometimes when we can't remember things, or we're having memory lag, or you just don't quite feel right, it's because you're dehydrated. And I don't think we talk enough about what dehydration feels like and what it actually does to our bodies. Can you talk a little bit about that, Mr. Harp?
Well, when things dry out, they seem to swell. I mean, and our bodies are no different than some of the things that we see outside. Okay. When we need rain, when we wish that it would rain because our garden needs it. Oh, look at that dirt, it's so dry. Look at those flowers. Well, that's the inside of our bodies too. Look at that. Oh my goodness, look at our lawns. Look at that. We know when it needs to rain. We need the water. Everything needs it. Our body is the same thing, but it needs it many more times a day. We need to keep our nasal passages moist. We need to keep our eyes moist.
Yeah. We have to keep our brains lubricated.
We have to keep our brains lubricated, especially when you talk about memory. The water that goes to the brain, is especially when you drink some after being dehydrated, and you go, and you start looking around and things get a little clearer, and you're like, now what was I saying?
I have done that. My kids will be like, what's wrong with you? And I'll drink some water and I'll be like, okay, I can focus now. What were we talking about? And my kids are like, okay, mommy, you need to you must be tired. I'm like, no, I needed water.
Yes.
So, water is very important. And I wanted to stress that because, in America, water is also a huge money-making venture. Everybody sells every kind of type of water there is. And I don't want to put up any other sports drink or any specific type of water against another. But water in itself is an essential need for our body.
It's and there's a lot of things that contribute to where we are in our, marketing dominance and, need for products and product placement and all of those things. But we've done so many things in our water resources. We've done so many things in our water that our water is not safe to drink. lead poisoning and other things of that nature. You know, there's people who are catching many names of diseases just by drinking out of natural water resources. And so what we have is big business capitalizing on it. You know, yes, it's something that we need, but now we won't drink out of it unless it's in a bottle.
Right.
You know, I don't want that water unless it's in the bottle. Did that come out the tap?
I tease my children and I tell them, because they'll say that, Mommy, we're out of bottled water. I'm like, we have water purifiers in the house, all kinds of things. I said, you know, when we were kids, I said, we drank out of the water hose in the backyard. And my son said, Mommy, right. He was like, I feel sorry for you. You had a hard childhood. I'm like, really?
That was some of the coldest, best water.
It was after a long day of play.
Thirsty and be like, now what were we doing?
We're going back to play hide and seek. So, you know, it is important. And I think some of those things that we did in older generations, we, you know, for the sake of technology, for the sake of safety, the environment, all different kinds of things we have gotten away from. And so I just really want to stress to us, as we're talking about fitness and making sure that we're not letting our visceral fat build up. I mean, subcutaneous fat is not always cute when you have love handles and you're like, wait a minute, this is more than a love handle. This is like a love pot or something. You're like, nope, and you want to get rid of it. But we also want to make sure that we're drinking our water. And as you said, taking in our fiber, making sure that we are the healthiest versions of ourselves that we can be. Because coming out of this pandemic and listening to the fact that over 500,000 people have passed from COVID, it's very scary. And when people started talking about underlying conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, stroke, all those things.
Yes.
And all of those things are managed by diet.
Listen, there's a lot of things that you can do to change the diet. Again, more protein, less calories, less carbs, but apples, blackberries, turmeric, green tea, but just tea. You know, these things will help in a diet. And here's another thing. Now, there's some studies, and, you know, there's studies. So let me just say, they say there's some studies. Vinegar, adding vinegar to your diet. Now, apple vinegar has a better taste, but adding vinegar, you know, a couple teaspoons a day into your diet is going to help you to burn belly fat. So I would say try it. And if you like fruit, get a kiwi. You know, kiwis are nice, you know, and that fiber. And that's what I'm talking about, the fiber that the fruit provides. Some of that fiber that, you know, many people take packets, many people take powders, many people take, you know, solubles and what have you. If that works for you, fine. But we have everything on this earth, you know. So there are people who have gardens that are going on in this time of year. Grow some vegetables. Find a hobby. Find a way to change your life by investing in something else. You know, grow some of your own vegetables and then turn around and eat them. You know, some strawberries and tomatoes and cucumbers and zucchini, and open up that playbook, open up that cookbook. And, you know, next thing you know, voila.
Exactly.
Now, listen, many people don't know. You and I are very close, and I sure do appreciate it. And so I just want everybody to know I just had dinner with you on Father's Day.
What did I cook, Mr. Harp?
I call it the shrimp primavera. You know, little pasta, little shrimp, lots of vegetables.
Spinach.
It was very good. Very good. And listen, when you do work out and you do keep yourself active, treat yourself. Eat. No, food is for us to eat and enjoy. No, and one of the ways to keep eating and enjoying without guilt, remorse, and the other feelings is to be active.
Absolutely.
Now, spending time with people you love, riding bikes. Riding bikes as a family unit, riding bikes as an extended family unit. These are some of the things that help keep others motivated. And so we back on it, all right?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And I'm back to walking every day. So that's a good thing too.
All right. I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Thank you, Mr. Harp, for coming on and talking to us about father figures and what we can do to tone our abdominal muscles and why water is important. And it's always talking about politics. Thank you so much for coming on. We know that next month you will have another fantastic topic for us. But before we go, tell us how we can reach you.
Eric Harp 9@gmail.com. I accept all comments and letters. Holla at me. You can find me on my Facebook. Just find Eric Harp. You'll get me.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Harp, for being on our show. I truly appreciate it.
All right. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Davis. It's a pleasure. And good night.
Good night. Thank you guys for tuning into the Kim B. Davis Show. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, and TikTok. Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can see this show on youtube.com/Kimberly Bachelor Davis. You can listen to this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google. You can find out more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. I hope that you'll tune in to our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.